Happy Saturday. Whoop whoop. Oh goodness. I tell you, the past few weeks there have been a ton of things that I have gotten done with that I have been avoiding for a long time. One of them is cleaning out the shed, another one's cleaning out the basement, another one's doing some pressure washing, another one's mowing the yard and getting it cleaned up, and another one's painting the barn, which the last 2 days I've finally finished painting the barn. But I've been avoiding doing those things for so long. But since I have so much time on my hands, I have no excuses, no reason not to, so I'm doing it. Now, let's jump into the scripture today. And our word for the day is just that. It is avoidance. Avoidance. We have two scriptures today. The first one is from 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 2. And it says, God says, at just the right time I heard you. On the day of salvation, I helped you. Indeed, the right time is now. The right time is now. Especially for all those things you've been avoiding doing. The right time is now. The second scripture comes from Hebrews chapter 3, verse 15. It says, today, when you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. Wow. Wow. Today, when you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. Not if you hear it, but when you hear it. God is speaking to you, and he's calling to you. Don't avoid it. Don't harden your heart and avoid him. Some thoughts about this today. This is all from the New Living Translation, and the daily devotional here says, do you ever think that your plan is better than God's, or that his plan is just too inconvenient for you? It just doesn't fit in my schedule. Realize that God's call deserves and requires an immediate response. He does not ask you to do anything without giving you the resources and power to accomplish it. Let's think about that for a minute. He doesn't ask you to do anything without giving you the resources and the power to accomplish it. He could be asking you to do something way out of your comfort zone. He asks me to do stuff out of my comfort zone all the time. But never once when I have said yes has he not provided those resources and the power and the ability to do it. Even when I didn't think I had the ability to do it. The same thing happened when Summer was called into ministry. God called her into ministry, and she got to thinking and praying about it and thinking, I could write some Bible studies and I might be able to lead a small group. And then God comes back and tells her and says, no, you're going to be an elder. You're going to be a preacher in the Methodist church. And she's like, can I even do that, God? Are you serious? Really, God? You're calling me to be a preacher for real? Aren't there like thousands of other people that are more qualified than me to do this? And God answered her. God said, yeah, there are thousands of other people that are more qualified than you to do this. But I'm not calling them. I'm calling you. I don't want them. I want you. And God doesn't call the qualified all the time. He qualifies the called. He gives you the resources and that ability and the power to do those things. And Summer said yes, and the rest is history. And in the same note, when she said yes, that affected our whole family. And I prayed to God, well, God, what is my role in this? God, what do you have in store for me? What are you calling me to do? And I went and talked to a pastor friend of mine, Mike Ripsky, and we sat down and had a discussion about that when Summer got her call, and he said, well, do you think you're called into ministry? I said, absolutely not. Not in that way. I surely don't want to be a preacher. And he said, well, I asked him specifically, I said, what is the role of a preacher's spouse? What does a preacher's spouse do? And his answer was pretty short. He said, everything that the pastor needs you to do. Everything that the church needs you to do. And I got to thinking about it, and I said, well, let's define that. I said, what are those things? He said, it could be anything and everything. A pastor's spouse has to be adaptable. Every congregation you go to will have different expectations of what a preacher's spouse does. One place they may want you to work in the nursery. Another place, they may want you on the choir. They may want you on the praise team. They may want you to lead a Bible study. They may want you to mow the yard since you're a dude. They may want you fixing stuff in the parsonage in the church. And you've got to be adaptable to those situations. I thought, that's pretty much the way I've lived my whole life. So nothing new for me. I think I'm prepared for that. The difference in being a pastor's spouse and being the pastor is the pastor's role is clearly defined. Every church we've moved to, the pastor, their role is defined. God has said, this is what your role is. This is what you're doing. The pastor's spouse, a little different. But he has always, in my experience, given me the resources and the ability and the power to do whatever it is that those expectations of me have been, that he has placed before me. He's always provided. Now, if you avoid the opportunities that God gives you, you will also miss out on the blessings that come along with those opportunities as well. So if you accept his call, you will be living according to his will, which will bring you great blessings and joy. Now, questions for the day here. Have you received a clear call from God? And will you avoid it or will you accept it? The key here is in Hebrews. It says, today, when you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. Guys, God's calling you. God's calling you to do something in your life. I don't know what it is because I'm not exactly sure who's watching these videos and who's not. But God knows what he's calling you to do. And all you have to do is listen. And it says right here in Hebrews, when you hear his voice, not if, but when you hear his voice, don't harden your hearts. Answer his call. God bless you guys. Thank you for watching, and if this has touched you in any way, feel free to share it, hit that subscribe button, give it a big thumbs up, and I hope to see you on Monday. I'm taking Sabbath tomorrow. We will be doing some more videos for tomorrow, but they won't be the daily devotionals, but I hope to see you next week. Blessings.